So Module 3, here we're looking beyond the financial statements. Last module we're really into the detail of the financial statements. Now we're looking at sort of the non-financial performance reporting that various cooperatives use, and we look at some of the frameworks. There are a lot of frameworks out there that cooperatives are using, but we'll look at International Integrated Reporting, Reporting 3.0, the Cooperative Performance Indicators that we're working on here at St. Mary's, and the UN Sustainability Development Goals. So at the end of the module, you should be able to describe how cooperatives understand and promote the work that they have done or could do in their communities and environmentally. So looking at telling the story of cooperatives, the 7 principles are a great advantage for cooperatives in telling their story and ultimately demonstrating the cooperative difference. So cooperatives and credit unions can tell a lot of their story through the non-financial key performance indicators. Some of those could be, for example, percentage of revenue donated to the community. They could look at reporting on some of the things that they're doing to address the environmental concerns. So you'll find that most for-profit enterprises also include KPIs in their annual reports. So TD Bank in Canada is a prime example. They provide a lot of information that co-ops should also provide. So I think when you look at what they're providing, I think this is food for thought in terms of what can a co-op talk about to differentiate. So one thing that they can do is report on the 7 principles. That is a great tool that they can use, but not many actually do it. And what I found in my own research, they are indirectly reporting on the 7 principles. Like I can find indicators and information in annual reports that I can correlate to each of the 7 principles, but the co-ops themselves don't actually do that. Okay, so looking at some of the non-financial reporting frameworks. So it's important to provide this non-financial information to reflect the value added as a result of being a cooperative. There's a wide array of frameworks. There's the Accountability 1000, GRI, Value Added, Integrated Reporting, Reporting 3.0, and there's always some new ones coming on the scene. So if you want to see all the different types of frameworks that are out there, on our website, on the CARC website, you will see there a link to an online tool called MeasureSmart. So what MeasureSmart does, it lists all the different types of frameworks and whether or not they're being used by cooperatives or just commercial enterprises or not-for-profit, and it provides a link to those frameworks. So cooperatives are relatively new to adopting International Integrated Reporting and Reporting 3.0. And I think it's important to consider, are these frameworks really enhancing reporting, or is it a case of copying the latest investor-owned business reporting framework? So are you just adopting the latest, newest, shiniest thing that's out there in the reporting world? So looking at frameworks in action, what co-ops are actually doing. And in Canada, for example, we have 2 cooperatives, and I know a lot of the students come from Van City Credit Union and from the cooperators, and they're certainly the leaders in being innovative in reporting, not just in the cooperative world, but in general, even compared to other commercial enterprises. So I have a video recorded for this module where I interviewed Julia Robbins, who's responsible for the reporting at Van City, and I think you'll find the video very interesting. So it's important that these are just frameworks. Co-ops ultimately have the option of determining what and how they should measure their performance. There are certain issues with respect to data validity and comparability, and benchmarking. So a lot of cooperatives will report on a certain activity over time. So, for example, they might be reporting on recycling efforts, and they might show a 5 to 10 year history. But even though their own history might show improvement, if you were to compare them to a benchmark, maybe they're still way below the benchmark. And the benchmark is really what's missing for a lot of cooperatives. We don't see that there's any publicly available benchmarks that cooperatives can use to evaluate their performance. And especially as it relates to cooperatives. You know, there's benchmarks. If you're a credit union, there's a lot of benchmarks you can find for banks. You can compare yourself to banks, but not necessarily to other cooperatives. Also, there appears to be a lack of attention on measurement related to the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. And you would think that cooperatives, more so than regular commercial enterprises, that, you know, co-ops would be really first out of the gate with wanting to demonstrate what they're doing with respect to the UN SDGs. So moving along and looking at frameworks, the Center of Excellence Accounting Reporting, CARC, here at St. Mary's, we've been working with the cooperative sector on developing cooperative performance indicators. And this is a pilot project that we're working on with 15 or so co-ops from across Canada. There's some in the US and in Chile. And this is done in a participatory manner. So by that I mean we're just facilitating. So basically the cooperatives themselves are deciding what they want to measure and how they're going to define the different indicators that they're going to measure. So we have a situation where the co-ops have decided that they want to measure their performance along the 7 principles, and they've chosen anywhere from 2 to 4 indicators for each of the principles. And so we're pilot testing them now, and we're opening it up to others. So if your cooperative is interested in participating, please get in touch with me. We want to add more people to get more diversity into our pilot, so that way we would consider all the different types of issues that could come up. And that's the whole point of a pilot. Do something on a small scale first before you roll it out to hundreds or thousands of organizations. And I have the link there on our website where you can go and find more information about the Cooperative Performance Indicators project. So another project that we're working on here at St. Mary's in CARC is the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. So we have 2 projects. The first one is being sponsored or funded by Cooperatives and Mutuals Canada, and that is basically comprised of a review of a sample of annual reports where we look at the top 50 co-ops globally and the top 50 co-ops in Canada, and we review their annual reports and establish what is the current level of reporting that would reflect the UN SDGs. A second project related to the UN SDGs, this one is funded by SSHRC, which stands for Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, and this is an arm of the federal government of Canada that provides funding to academics to carry out research. For this project, we're also continuing to work with Cooperatives and Mutuals Canada, and we're identifying here by working with, again, another pilot group of co-ops from across the country, which of the 17, maybe even all of them, are applicable for co-ops, and if so, how you would measure them. And again, there's more information about that on our website. And of course, if your cooperative is interested in participating, we'd love to have them on board. Just ask the contact person at your organization to get in touch with me. Okay, so finally, the Living Lab for this module is looking at two different reporting frameworks. One is applying the what counts concept from Quarter, MOOC, and Richmond reading. So see how you would apply that model to your cooperative. And the second aspect of the Living Lab is to describe how the 8 elements of international integrated reporting could be provided by your co-op's annual report. So even though you may not have formally adopted international integrated reporting, it is likely that many of the elements are already there in your annual report. To see if you can go find them is basically the task for this particular Living Lab. So that concludes Module 3.